Kitty felt that in her manner of life, she would find an example of what she was now so painfully seeking: interest in life, a dignity in life apart from the worldly relations of girls with men, which so revolted Kitty, and appeared to her now as a shameful hawking about of goods in search of a purchaser. The more attentively Kitty watched her unknown friend, the more convinced she was this girl was the perfect creature she fancied her, and the more eagerly she wished to make her acquaintance. The two girls used to meet several times a day, and every time they met, Kitty's eyes said, "Who are you? What are you? Are you really the exquisite creature I imagine you to be? But for goodness sake don't suppose," her eyes added, "that I would force my acquaintance on you. I simply admire you and like you." "I like you too, and you're very, very sweet." "And I should like you better still, if I had time," answered the eyes of the unknown girl. Kitty saw indeed, that she was always busy. Either she was taking the children of a Russian family home from the Springs, or fetching a shawl for a sick lady, and wrapping her up in it, or trying to interest an irritable invalid, or selecting and buying cakes for tea for someone. Soon after the arrival of the Sherbatskys there appeared in the morning crowd at the Springs two persons who attracted universal and unfavorable attention. These were a tall man with a stooping figure, and huge hands, in an old coat too short for him, with black, simple, and yet terrible eyes, and a pockmarked, kind-looking woman, very badly and tastelessly dressed. Recognizing these persons as Russians, Kitty had already in her imagination begun constructing a delightful and touching romance about them. But the princess, having ascertained from the visitors' list that this was Nikolai Levin and Marya Nikolaevna, explained to Kitty what a bad man this Levin was, and all her fancies about these two people vanished. Not so much from what her mother told her, as from the fact that it was Konstantin's brother. This pair suddenly seemed to Kitty intensely unpleasant. This Levin, with his continual twitching of his head, aroused in her now an irrepressible feeling of disgust. It seemed to her that his big, terrible eyes, which persistently pursued her, expressed a feeling of hatred and contempt, and she tried to avoid meeting him. Chapter 31. It was a wet day, it had been raining all the morning, and the invalids, with their parasols, had flocked into the arcades. Kitty was walking there with her mother and the Moscow colonel, smart and jaunty in his European coat, bought ready-made at Frankfurt. They were walking on one side of the arcade, trying to avoid Levin, who was walking on the other side. Varenka, in her dark dress, in a black hat with a turn-down brim, was walking up and down the whole length of the arcade with a blind Frenchwoman, and, every time she met Kitty, they exchanged friendly glances. "Mama, couldn't I speak to her?" said Kitty, watching her unknown friend, and noticing that she was going up to the spring, and that they might come there together. "Oh, if you want to so much, I'll find out about her first and make her acquaintance myself," answered her mother. "What do you see in her out of the way?" "A companion, she must be. If you like, I'll make acquaintance with Madame Stahl. I used to know her _Belle_, added the princess, lifting her head haughtily. Kitty knew that the princess was offended that Madame Stahl had seemed to avoid making her acquaintance. Kitty did not insist. "How wonderfully sweet she is," she said, gazing at Varenka just as she handed a glass to the Frenchwoman. "Look how natural and sweet it all is." "It's so funny to see your underscore and Guman's underscore," said the princess. "No, we'd better go back," she added, noticing Levin coming towards them with his companion and a German doctor, to whom he was talking very noisily and angrily. They turned to go back, when suddenly they heard, not noisy talk, but shouting. Levin, stopping short, was shouting at the doctor, and the doctor, too, was excited. A crowd gathered about them. The princess and Kitty beat a hasty retreat, while the colonel joined the crowd to find out what was the matter. A few minutes later the colonel overtook them. "What was it?" inquired the princess. "Scandalous and disgraceful," answered the colonel. "The one thing to be dreaded is meeting Russians abroad." That tall gentleman was abusing the doctor, flinging all sorts of insults at him because he wasn't treating him quite as he liked, and he began waving his stick at him. It's simply a scandal." "Oh, how unpleasant," said the princess. "Well, and how did it end?" Luckily at that point that one in the mushroom had intervened. "A Russian lady, I think she is," said the colonel. "Mademoiselle Varenka?" asked Kitty. "Yes, yes. She came to the rescue before anyone. She took the man by the arm and led him away." "There, Mama," said Kitty, "you wonder that I'm enthusiastic about her." The next day, as she watched her unknown friend, Kitty noticed that Mademoiselle Varenka was already on the same terms with Levin and his companion as with her other _protégés_. She went up to them, entered into conversation with them, and served as interpreter for the woman, who could not speak any foreign language. Kitty began to entreat her mother still more urgently to let her make friends with Varenka. And, disagreeable as it was to the princess to seem to take the first step in wishing to make the acquaintance of Madame Stahl, who thought fit to give herself airs, she made inquiries about Varenka, and, having ascertained particulars about her tending to prove that there could be no harm though little good in the acquaintance, she herself approached Varenka and made acquaintance with her. Choosing a time when her daughter had gone to the spring, while Varenka had stopped outside the baker's, the princess went up to her. "Allow me to make your acquaintance," she said, with her dignified smile. "My daughter has lost her heart to you," she said. "Possibly you do not know me." "I am. That feeling is more than reciprocal, Princess," Varenka answered hurriedly. "What a good deed you did yesterday to our poor compatriot," said the princess. Varenka flushed a little. "I don't remember. I don't think I did anything," she said. "Why, you saved that Levin from disagreeable consequences." "Yes, sa compagna called me, and I tried to pacify him. He's very ill, and was dissatisfied with the doctor." "I'm used to looking after such invalids." "Yes, I've heard you live at Mentone with your aunt, I think Madame Stahl. I used to know her _Belsour _."